Queen Elizabeth I wasn't just a ruler, she was a living legend. She called herself the Virgin Queen, dressed in gowns dripping with jewels, and ruled with both sharp wit and an iron will. People remember her for defeating the Spanish Armada, strengthening Protestant England, and building one of history's most powerful courts. But behind the pearls, powder, and dazzling gowns was a woman full of pride, fear, and obsession. She cared deeply about how the world saw her, and when it came to hygiene, things got downright bizarre. Back then, cleanliness wasn't about health, it was about appearances. Elizabeth turned it into a kind of performance. She believed water could make her sick. Terrified of aging, she treated her body like something sacred, untouchable by time or even by soap. In this video, you'll see 5 of the strangest, most shocking ways Queen Elizabeth tried to stay clean, and the last one, you won't believe it. Elizabeth had a powerful addiction: sugar. At the time, sugar was rare, expensive, and shipped from faraway lands. Most people never tasted it in their lifetime, but for the Queen of England, it was everywhere. She didn't just enjoy sweets, she drowned in them. Her banquets were filled with candied flowers, sugar-dusted fruits, marzipan, and desserts dripping in syrup. To own sugar was to flaunt your wealth, and Elizabeth used it to show off England's growing power. But this sweet obsession came with a terrible cost. Dental care in the 1500s was primitive. People cleaned their teeth with twigs, rags, or crushed eggshells. Elizabeth, however, had her own special recipe, a toothpaste made of sugar and herbs. Yes, sugar! The very thing rotting her teeth was the same thing she used to clean them. On top of that, she used gritty powders that scraped away her enamel. Slowly, her once proud smile collapsed. By the 1590s, foreign visitors described her teeth as black, broken, or missing. Her breath was so foul it made people recoil, and sometimes her words were hard to understand because she spoke through a mouth of rot. Yet she refused to let doctors pull them out. Stubborn and terrified of pain, she wouldn't give in. To prove tooth removal wasn't deadly, one of her courtiers even had a tooth pulled right in front of her. Imagine that, someone willingly screaming in agony just to convince the queen to open her mouth. But here's the strangest twist. Instead of mocking her decaying teeth, noblewomen in her court copied them. They blackened their own teeth with soot to match the queen's look. In her court, rotting teeth became a mark of beauty and wealth. The darker your smile, the richer you appeared. That's the power of a queen. You may have heard the famous line, "I bathe once a month whether I need it or not." Some say Elizabeth really said it, others think it's just legend. Either way, it shows how odd hygiene was in the 1500s. Back then, people believed water was dangerous. It could spread sickness, weaken the body, and let in bad air, something they called miasma. Bathing to them wasn't healthy, it was risky. So Elizabeth avoided it. Instead of scrubbing with soap and water, she changed her linen shifts, sometimes several times a day. People thought the fabric absorbed sweat and dirt, pulling it away from the skin. No water needed, just fresh fabric. When she did freshen up, she used rose water, vinegar, or herbal mixes dabbed on her skin by handmaids. It wasn't about health, it was ritual. Her body was treated like a sacred object, carefully preserved. And why not just take a proper bath? Because it was a huge ordeal. Her palaces had no plumbing. A bath meant hauling in a giant wooden tub, heating buckets of water, and bringing in several servants just to set it up. Bathing was more like planning a royal ceremony than a daily habit. So instead, Elizabeth relied on perfume, gowns, and illusions of cleanliness. She wasn't lazy, she simply couldn't risk reality smudging her perfect image. Her face is one of the most iconic in history, white as porcelain, smooth as marble, cold as stone. But that wasn't her real skin. It was a mask, carefully painted each day, not just for beauty, but for power. In her time, pale skin meant wealth, class, even divine favor. And Elizabeth took it to the extreme. Her favorite makeup was Venetian ceruse, a deadly mix of white lead and vinegar. It created a flawless, ghostly look, hiding every scar and blemish. But underneath, it poisoned her skin, leaving rashes and sores. The more damage it caused, the more layers she added, until her face became a stiff, frozen mask. For her lips, she used mercury-based pigments, bright red but deadly toxic. Over time, her memory faltered, her hands trembled, and her body weakened. She was slowly killing herself with her own beauty routine. So why keep doing it? Because her face wasn't hers anymore. It belonged to England. Her image was her power. Artists were forbidden from painting her true likeness. They reused face patterns from her youth, keeping her eternally young in portraits. She even avoided natural light, relying on candles and shadows to hide her age. In her later years, her makeup was said to be so fragile that a touch could crack it. She barely washed her face at all. Washing meant wiping away the mask and exposing the mortal woman underneath. Did she know the danger? Historians still argue, but one thing is clear: Elizabeth chose legend over health. To understand her hygiene, you need to understand her greatest fear: losing control. Every ritual, from her painted face to her perfumed gloves, wasn't just vanity, it was power. In her world, bathing wasn't just rare, it was dangerous. It meant exposing the body, both physically and symbolically. And Elizabeth refused to appear weak. So she created her own version of cleanliness, built on perfumes and ritual. Each day, her maids prepared rosewater, lavender oil, and herbal brews. These weren't for scrubbing, they were for masking odors and creating the illusion of freshness. A dab on the wrists, a scented handkerchief, a hidden pomanda filled with herbs. She floated through her court like a walking flower garden. Even her gloves were perfumed, gifts she handed out to courtiers to extend her image of grace. Her hair, too, was rarely washed. Instead, it was stiffened with sugar water and egg whites, then powdered. As she aged and her real hair fell out, likely from years of toxic cosmetics, she switched to auburn wigs to keep her youthful look. Underneath, her skin blistered and scarred. Rumors spread of peeling flesh, sores, and damage so bad that mirrors were banned from her private rooms. She even had a servant whose only job was to powder her shoulders in secret so no one would see the truth. Elizabeth had become trapped in her own illusion. To bathe was to admit she was human, and she refused. In her last years, she carried a scented walking stick. When courtiers passed too close, she lifted it to her nose, not just to block their smell, but to remind them, "I am the queen. I am not like you." From the outside, Elizabeth's palaces looked like paradise: stone walls, golden ceilings, velvet carpets. But step inside, and you'd find filth. No toilets, no sinks, no plumbing. The queen's private toilet was a cushioned wooden chair with a ceramic pot underneath, emptied and perfumed several times a day. The man who handled it wasn't a servant, but a trusted noble, the groom of the stool. Because being close to the queen, even in private, meant being close to power. But the rest of the palace was far worse. Chamber pots were dumped into cesspits, and night soil men carried waste through the halls at night. The stench was constant. To mask it, people burned herbs, scattered flowers, and laid rushes on the floor. But the rushes were rarely cleaned, leaving layers of rotting filth beneath. Even the queen couldn't escape the stink. She often moved her court from palace to palace, partly just to escape the smell. Elizabeth didn't rule by accident, she ruled through image. Her hygiene wasn't neglect, it was strategy. Every skipped bath, every layer of powder, every perfumed glove was part of a performance. In a world where a woman's power could be destroyed by one rumor, she built herself into something untouchable. She knew the truth. Water could wash away the mask. A bare face could invite judgment. An aging body could destroy the legend. So she powdered, she perfumed, she painted, she posed, and she became Gloriana. Elizabeth I may not have been clean by today's standards, but she was flawless by design. In her world, soap and water weren't tools of health, they were threats to power. And in the end, her true cleanliness wasn't on her skin, it was in her image.